West Ham versus Arsenal. We're going to talk about this one. And could this be a potential banana skin for the resurgent Arsenal after their little mini blip? Harry Symeou and Nubaid Haroon join me, which is wonderful. Let me come to you first, Nubaid. Let's get this out of the way. Arsenal beat Liverpool. What were your thoughts kind of on that game, and in particular on Arsenal? We spoke on this show about how we kind of thought that it was probably Liverpool's day, but it could be the defence of Arsenal that really helps with this. And it was a great victory for them, despite having a bit of luck, I guess.
Yeah, I think Arsenal deserved the win, which is what I said on the day. I think Harry tweeted about it as well. That's probably one of Arsenal's most complete performances against a Big Six side since Arteta's come in. There were a few things. I think we spoke last week about why Liverpool would have the advantage. I think Szoboszlai being out really favoured Arsenal. Jorginho coming in really favoured Arsenal. I think Arteta tinkered perfectly. Kai Havertz as the 9 was superb. And we sort of sat here last week going, if Jesus isn't there, they may struggle to put the ball in the back of the net. But Kai was huge for them. And I think in terms of the resurgence, I think that game, and Harry, you can speak on this, but I think that'll give them the feeling more than we beat Liverpool and we're on it. If you've seen the videos this week, there's comps of everything coming out. So I think the feeling is officially there.
Do you know what? As a general theme, that's very much in my head right now. The sort of the flip-flopping of feeling is wild right now. Like Chelsea, we're going to talk about Chelsea this week as well. Chelsea, it was over for Poch.
Yeah.
And then now they have one game, and I'm seeing channels go, wow, what he's done with this group of players. Yeah. It's like, what? So coming back to Arsenal, in terms of, the feeling wasn't, it felt, I kept using the word clunky, I kept using the word weird last week. Does one game like that change
I think it was
a lot or not?
I think it was kind of like the perfect recipe, like all molded together. It was against a side that are also in the title race, the side that were the top of the pile at the time. Arsenal were without Jesus, were still without Thomas Partey, were without Tomiyasu, and left back was an area that I was concerned about going.
I'll be honest, going into the game as well, I felt the narrative I sort of set before I started watching the game, thinking I was going to do a video afterwards, was that it's Liverpool's squad's a bit too much in comparison to Arsenal, because I thought bringing in Jorginho and Havertz was a problem to a point, but those were the two key men in the end. So it did really, change people's minds a lot.
Yeah, I'd spoken a lot about it in a podcast in the week leading up to the game. It's not necessarily that Jorginho's the best midfielder. It's not that. It's that he seems to complement Declan Rice, and Declan Rice seems to complement him as well. Yeah. There is something about that partnership that works really, really well. And what you see Arsenal do is revert to more like a double pivot with the two of them in the team, rather than playing with that one holding player and pushing on the 2-8. And I think that was the key in kind of stifling Liverpool. And then Kai Havertz's movement was really, really interesting, because he wasn't staying up top like a front man. He was dropping into midfield.
That's where the first goal came from, wasn't it?
Exactly. And he was creating corridors for your Sakas and your Martinellis to come into. And I think that's what those two have been lacking this season. There hasn't been that space, because teams naturally set up differently against Arsenal now.
Well, that brings us on brilliantly to this game, which can definitely be a banana skin, because that's the thing I would say with any single game, is you play the next team and they play completely different. And those games against the top sides, that Liverpool game felt more like the Man City game at home, where it was very tight, very congested. And it was kind of about being clever with the press at the right time, which why I thought Jorginho was fantastic, because yes, he's not got sort of speed of legs, but he's got speed of mind, which I think really, really helped. When it comes to West Ham, they're taking on a team who have beat them in the last 2 times they've played them. Bit of a bogey team for them? If so, why is that?
Yeah, they are a bit of a bogey team. If you go back to last season, Arsenal dropped 2 crucial points there in April, 2-0 up after 10 minutes. Arsenal were cruising and they ended up leaving there with essentially 2 points dropped. If you go back to the game at the Emirates in December, West Ham ran out winners that day. But it was one of those fixtures that if you play it 100 times, Arsenal win it 99. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but to have 70% of the possession, to have 30 attempts at goal, and then for the narrative afterwards to be that Arsenal can't create chances, it drove me wild, because that wasn't the case.
Were there chances there as well as the shots themselves? Because teams like West Ham, we've seen that before. You see that with, say, Sean Dyche's Everton side at times. It'll be about blocking the goal itself. So you're allowed for shots, but are they actually real chances?
I think there was more than enough chances for Arsenal to take something from the game. The defeat was awful in terms of how the game went. But then they had that game against Fulham afterwards, which just kind of compounded the problems that the Arsenal fan base maybe thought there was. And I know this sounds strange, but because of how few games Arsenal played in January, I think people spent way too much time just trying to pick out deficiencies when actually the team was never that far off.
Interesting.
The one thing I would say is what you said earlier about the Liverpool game was that all the pieces sort of came together in that game, and I think you then said each game is different. And I think when you come up against West Ham, the pieces also were in Arsenal's favour and worked out on the day because Liverpool's pieces were out of place. If West Ham's pieces are in place, then the game's completely different. And also against West Ham, they're not going to press, whereas against Liverpool press and Arsenal play out. So I think it's literally the games are chalk and cheese. They're so different. And
do you think with Arsenal's setup moving forward, so much praise for Jorginho and Kai Havertz, I put forward the idea, again, with games being different, both of these players, for me, I could see both of these players getting dropped.
They're horses for courses.
Yeah.
That's how I would summarise those two players. They've both got very specific skill sets and have very specific uses against certain opposition. We talked about Havertz dropping deep. If that happens against West Ham, it doesn't work because West Ham are going to sit with a low block. They're going to let you play in front of them, and you're going to need maybe that centre forward of yours to go in and occupy centre halves and maybe create space for others. So maybe Havertz isn't the answer, but going into this weekend, it's very unlikely at the time of recording that Gabriel Jesus is going to be available. So if it's Havertz or Nketiah, based on last weekend's performance, I think you have to go with Kai Havertz.
I think for this game you go Nketiah. Because I just think, I know Kai Havertz was outstanding against Liverpool, but that's also because Liverpool are proactive defending. Kai Havertz is almost good when he's got someone on his back. When he hasn't, and I think we all know like his technical qualities there are in question. Whereas I think Eddie Nketiah goes, I'm staying in the box, just keep putting it in here. And West Ham will just camp inside the box.
Yeah, I agree. And so if there are just crosses coming in, that's the other thing, is that although he's the most physical striker they've got, or him or Nketiah, just putting crosses in is not going to work for them as well. So that's why I think Jorginho gets dropped, because I think you go and have a more attacking player in that midfield three. Let Declan Rice just sit there because you know it's going to be in transition anyway.
I think that's the key though. The transition point was really important against Liverpool. Having Jorginho and Rice together and Zinchenko not going into midfield all the time protected Arsenal against the transition. And West Ham, although I expect them to sit deep and defend, they do have the players, Bowen, Kudus, the likes of who can hit you on the break. So I think Arteta, having seen the recent results against them and having looked back on those games, will be respectful and mindful of that.
I think it's fascinating. I think this for me is the difference between whether you're going for the title or whether you're going to win the title. If this is Man City, they go, this is what we're going to do today. You come and beat us. Whereas I think Arteta, and Klopp has been guilty of it as well. Klopp did it against Arsenal where he went, maybe let's not leave too many risks, and that then leaves you open to the sort of results that you've had previously against West Ham.
These West Ham players that could be crucial for them: Paquetá, Jared Bowen, Kudus you spoke of as well. They're going under the radar a little bit, West Ham. I think overall having a good season, but only one win from their last 5 matches. And it's one where the thing I find funny about West Ham is that they can look awful and stay in a game, like look so bad. I watched the Bournemouth game recently, and it was sort of, for me, it felt like it was more Bournemouth in the first half, but then they just slowly kind of hang in there. Got a lot of sort of experienced pros in there. Jared Bowen's been fantastic. He started the last 8 Premier League games as a central striker for them. Antonio obviously has been out for a while now. 11 goals this season, 55 progressive passes, and 128 progressive passes received. So he's so crucial on the counter-attack. What about Lucas Paquetá? If he can be fit, there's been suggestions that he'll be crucial to offer that little bit of quality.
I mean, it's no coincidence that the last 5 games he's not played any of them, and they've lacked that bit of quality. I think with that West Ham team, you've got players like Ward-Prowse and Jared Bowen, Thomas Souček, who provide you the intangibles, the moments from set pieces, moments on the counter. Paquetá is the sort of player that they actually play their football through. And strangely enough, I don't think he was ever this profile before, but because David Moyes is playing him as this like hybrid left-sided midfielder, they almost ping the ball into him and go, you hold it, allow Emerson to get round you, we'll get Ward-Prowse into the hole, and then Bowen goes, and then we play. And I think they've missed that sort of player in their side, and obviously Bowen's looked a little bit more leggy and isolated. Now that he's back, and Kudus just came back as well, they are dangerous. They've got that bit of quality on the counter-attack, and then Jared Bowen is, honestly, he's a gunman. I said it recently, and it was very unpopular because of his age and he signed a contract, but he is the hire to Mo Salah's throne. That profile is so similar. Wow. He's so dangerous in and around the penalty area. And this is classic Arsenal West Ham. It's made for Arsenal.
Well, give us your prediction then, Nubaid. Go on.
I think West Ham win 2-1.
Do you?
Yeah.
No bias seeping out there at all. Harry?
I'm going to take the famous old 1-0 to the Arsenal. I think it'll be one of those games where Arsenal have pretty much all of the ball. West Ham will look to hit on the break. But as I say, I'm confident that if Arteta picks the right team, Arsenal are good enough to limit those transitional opportunities. But I think Arsenal, if they're patient, they've got enough quality and the confidence, the mood. You guys spoke about it earlier. They're riding on a high at the moment, and I think they'll be okay.
Just a quick one before you give a prediction. Do you think they're riding a bit too high?
Who? Arsenal.
I massively disagree with this.
In the glow of last weekend?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it myself, if I'm honest. I thought it was a really good... And it was a weird one. I thought the fallout from it was dumb in terms of like the celebrations and things like that. And there wasn't a focus on the performance itself. And therefore, I think Arsenal fans have gone and done that themselves.
Yeah.
But I do think... I think they're still going to not win loads of games by... I know they have a couple of times, 4-0, 5-0. This will be tight. This will be so tight. I think the confidence from that last game will give them the ability to take their chances. And I think it'll be a 2-1 win for Arsenal in this one.
Just quickly on that mood thing about them maybe riding too high. I understand why people say that, but that energy that we had last season, it's not been there this season.
Yeah.
And there was a very deliberate attempt by Mikel Arteta and the football club over the course of the last week in the build-up to that game to make sure that feel-good feeling was there. And when you get the result as well, you need to ride on it a bit.